Hello, everyone. Welcome to Amplified with AI, the podcast where we explore how technology is transforming industries and amplifying human potential. I'm your host, Ishaant Majumdar, a high school junior passionate about how innovation and AI can drive positive change in our world. Today, I'm honored to have Mr. Arjun Bhattacharya with us. Mr. Bhattacharya is a senior executive at Ion Exchange, one of Asia's leading companies in water and environmental management. For decades, Ion Exchange has been at the forefront of sustainable water solutions, from purification and wastewater treatment to recycling and resource recovery, helping industries and communities build a more sustainable future. Mr. Bhattacharya's experience blends engineering, technology adaptation, and sustainability leadership, giving him a unique perspective on how digital transformation and how artificial intelligence can make water management more efficient, resilient, and equitable. In our conversation today, we'll explore how AI and innovation are changing the way we monitor, treat, and conserve water, and what that means for businesses, governments, and communities worldwide. Mr. Bhattacharya, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ishant, for inviting me. Thank you for the nice introduction.
So before we dive in, I'd love to start with a bit of your personal story. What first drew you to work in the field of water and environmental management, and how was your journey evolved at Ion Exchange over the years?
Yeah, so I grew up in an area where there was plenty of water, but there was still water scarcity. We had floods, we had situations where there were um, breakouts of diseases. And as I grew up, I started to understand a little bit more about water. So, access to water in many places is not the issue. It is the access to clean water in a sustainable manner that is the issue. And remember, more than 90% of the diseases are waterborne. So, if you take care of your water, you essentially take care of your health. So, that was the
Yeah.
motivation for me to get into water.
Okay, okay. That's very interesting. And how do you see technology generally speaking? How do you work with it at your company?
Yeah, so the way we look at water, and you cannot separate water from energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whenever you think of water, for the person who is out there on the street, he is
Yeah.
thinking about water getting transported, pumps, and occasionally you'd see those huge areas where you see some water treatment, wastewater treatment, and so on and so forth. So energy is huge, and energy means it also has a strong equation with sustainability, because somewhere you're producing electricity
Mm-hmm.
or something to run your systems. So our idea of sustainability is how we can make it more energy efficient, and how we
Mm.
can create a circular system around water, so that the access to water is at the least expensive point for society.
Okay. And by least expensive, you mean both in terms of energy and cost, right?
Energy and cost, they are,
Yeah.
you cannot separate one from the other.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we make most of what we have within us to make water more available? So an example I can give, I mean, if you look into your homes,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you have your gray water, black water that comes from your toilet. So it gets collected, and then it gets collected into a main uh, distribution pipe, and that main distribution pipe goes to another larger distribution pipe. So in
Mm-hmm.
all areas you're essentially pumping, repumping, so that's energy. And
Yeah.
then finally it goes to a big waste treatment plant. So by the time it comes to the waste treatment plant where your water has to be treated, you have already expended a lot of cost,
Mm.
because you're essentially pumping, piping,
Yeah.
cost of piping. So our idea of looking at is, can we reimagine that whole scenario, just like the way we had looked at our energy versus battery equation? Can we also bring in the same concept where, rather than transporting, can we treat a lot of the things at our homes itself? So our homes itself become uh, producers of water that can be reused, good quality of water that you can reuse for your gardening, for your other purposes. And then the remaining solid residue, can you know rather than pump it out with the water, can you recover some, maybe talk about biofertilizers for your gardens and so on and so
Mm,
forth,
mhm.
or you can sell it to somebody who wants to use it as some form of fuel or biochar, if you will.
Okay, okay, okay. And how is Ion Exchange integrating AI or data analytics in these operations where you're, separating it, giving biofuel or, using it for gardens and that kind of thing? How is
Yeah, so
that being used?
So again, moment you have systems, you have equipment, you have assets,
Hmm.
and they have a certain way of working. Efficiency comes into question. So let's say you are treating water and you are using membranes.
Hmm.
Membranes are very sensitive systems. They get foul, they get scaled because you have impurities in the water,
Yeah.
and then the more they scale, the more energy you have to spend in trying to push the water through. So idea of using AI or monitoring is to essentially capture those moments early in life so that you can take mitigating actions.
Hmm.
Maybe you want to step in, do an intervention and clean it in time so that you take that unnecessary energy spent out of the question. So when you do that at scale, you get 5%, 10% efficiency out of your systems, which you can return it back to the grid. So that is one way where we can take care of the energy equation in the system. The other way is that you're also extending asset life.
Hmm.
So these membranes are again made of, let's say, some form of polymers. So it comes to the journey of where chemicals have been made, or then you kind of polymerize them. So the longer you run, so
Hmm.
it is less stress on the supply chain. So that is one way where we are bringing AI, bringing in analytics to look at how systems degrade and how can we
Mm.
avoid the untimely degradation so that we can run it to the fullest.
I see, I see. So you're using things like predictive modeling to see, where these systems might
Yes,
collapse and for future issues that might happen in, the
that's a
future.
good way of putting it.
Yeah, yeah.
Predictive, yes, Ishant.
And speaking of inefficiency, system inefficiencies, um, so you said that can AI improve the early detection of water quality issues and that kind of thing, or system efficiencies, which I know you said earlier, but if you want to talk more about
Yeah, it can. So, water is interesting, right? It
that. Mhm.
carries so many things. It
Yeah.
carries dissolved minerals, it carries dissolved organics. So, the quality of water that comes to your system is never constant. It is to do with nature, it is to do with where the water is coming from. So, if you are able to, let's say, deploy AI that can find inexpensive ways of detecting the change in the characteristics of water and accordingly flex your system, you're automatically taking care of a lot of disturbance which otherwise remain uncontrolled. And when it remains uncontrolled, it has unintended consequences in the
Hmm.
downstream part. Because let's say you're getting wastewater from an industry, effluent, which is organics.
Yeah.
And if you're not kind of able, not characterizing them in to its fullest, it'll come there's sometimes there will be some ingress into the system that could cause some kind of a biological disorder, because
Mhm.
the best way and the most common way to treat your wastewater is essentially through biology. And biology means you have some kind of bacteria that could be susceptible to some kind of impurities that are unseen, so
Yeah.
they sometimes could peter out. So by detecting those disturbances early, you can protect your biological systems and make them run a lot more better.
Hmm.
So once you take care of that, you are then able to run the system in a, it's like managing your gut.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, right, you have the right kind of food, your gut will behave very well.
Hmm.
So ultimately, remember, wastewater treatment is a lot about how your gut functions, right? We are neatly separating the water and our solids in our system,
Hmm.
and that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to squeeze out the water that can be recovered for better use, and then we are trying to take care of the sludge or the solids in some way that can either end up as biofertilizers or some other useful
Yeah.
content.
Yeah, yeah. And you said earlier, which I found interesting, was that like the environment, nature affects how good your water quality is. And it reminded me of some work that's being done in Discovery Partners Institute in Chicago. So what's happening because of global warming, a lot of the lakes up north, where this was a
Hmm.
problem earlier in the south, but now it's coming a lot north in America, where there's brain-eating amoebas that are now being able to grow because of the change in temperature. And what this is doing is it's affecting the water quality. People swimming there become it's more dangerous now because of that change in the environment. So then they're using things like satellite and then computer vision to see, okay, this is where the algae blooms are, so this is where most likely the bacteria are, or different kinds of things like that, using data to see, the impacts of the environment on the water. And I thought it was pretty similar to, what you're doing, what could be.
Yeah, I mean, computer vision is big, or it's becoming bigger in the water industry because you can't, let's say, you want to characterize your water,
Mhm.
you can't always take it back to the lab and do
Yeah.
some kind of chromatography. It takes time. But if you were to bring in computer vision, where you kind of look at the texture of the water and get some inferences out of it, which you can use to control the system better, I think it'll help.
Hmm.
And that's where we are spending a lot of time as to how we can bring in computer vision in a big way to inline analyze the water and take actions that can help us run our systems better. That's a good point. I mean, computer vision is coming in certainly in a big way.
Absolutely.
Just by looking, let's say you have a membrane biological system,
Hmm.
and it has color and it has a certain texture. So we are using cameras to understand the fluctuation in the water and using that to drive certain behavior. Because the beauty of AI is that it takes in multivariate data. You can run models
Yeah.
where you can pick up spots that can help you to understand behavior, do some kind of a cause and effect relation by applying some of your own domain understanding onto the model,
Hmm.
and then come up with things that can help you run the plant in a better way. So think of it as if you are getting the best behavior, the best operator, by studying past good action and applying that
Mm,
repeatedly.
okay, I see, I
That's where
see.
we are finding the beauty of AI.
I see. That's interesting. That's interesting. So then, does that kind of go closely with like sustainability, Are you doing something where, okay, we were doing these practices earlier and then through models we saw that this was the most sustainable practice, so then we'll replicate that, or are you using AI differently in sustainability?
No, I mean, it's again water and energy. That's the
Mm,
nexus.
yeah.
So you spend less energy, you automatically, on the right side of the sustainability equation.
Hmm.
So when you are using AI, and we have seen that systematically in our systems, and it's a pattern. Once you apply analytics, once you apply monitoring, once you apply data collection, better data collection in your system,
Hmm.
you are able to squeeze out 5 to 10% margin on your energy.
Hmm.
And it is not just energy savings, you're also able to have better throughput of water. So
Hmm.
the same system, when it is able to produce, let's say, 5% more water, 10% more water,
Hmm.
automatically, in a sense, you are getting onto the right side of the equation. Then comes in the other you know other opportunities, like can you bring in sustainable energy like solar, can you bring in different ways of uh, bringing in energy neutrality to the equation.
Hmm.
I think those things will only help.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
right now, our focus is essentially driving uh, extended life cycle of our assets by using analytics, running more efficient energy systems, and returning back that electricity back to the grid,
Hmm.
and then finding out ways of, because if you another aspect is that we can also recover energy from high value, high organic laden water systems. So by making anaerobic systems where you have bacteria that can work to generate biomethane, and that biomethane you compress and then use it back into your system, or give it to somebody who needs it, you're automatically contributing to energy production.
Can
So
you
there
ex-
are different levers.
yeah, yeah. Can you explain more about that using bacteria to create biomethane or how does that work? Can you?
So it's in if you Google, you'll
Mm,
find sometimes, especially in vegetation, suddenly
yeah.
there fire comes up, right? That's essentially accumulated methane that just kind of explodes. I mean, the accumulated methane is essentially generated by bacteria that strives under anaerobic conditions. That means it strives under the absence of oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have anaerobic bacteria in a closed environment and you put in organic laden wastewater, I mean, essentially, you would imagine that coming from a food processing center, because you are doing, let's say, you're making juice, so that will have a rich content of uh, biological stuff. And biological stuff essentially are carbohydrates. So if you break it, you will get methane. So these anaerobic bacteria, they act on those waters
Mm-hmm.
and they start producing methane.
Yes.
And that methane, you essentially then take it to a purification system. You compress it,
Mm-hmm.
and you have something called biomethane. And methane is like CNG, right? It is energy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then you can put it in downstream systems. So
I
that's
see.
another way of bringing in energy neutrality into the system.
I see. I see. So that's actually really interesting using, I never thought, using biological things or like bacteria specifically would be able to, use it into your advantage. But I guess it kind of relates back similar to how you said earlier, it's a lot like your gut, right? So then that's why
Mhm.
people use like probiotics and that kind of thing to help, benefit the gut bacteria, which is kind of similar.
It's a good.
Yeah. And then how can technology help like developing regions specifically? I know you work with them a little bit, manage water scarcity or pollution or, this energy uh, more effectively.
Yeah. So water is interesting. Either you have lots of water
Hmm.
or you don't have water. So there are
Yeah.
some regions which were genuinely water scarce, and there are some regions which has lots of water. But in both the ways, you have both the systems, you have to find a way of creating sustainable solutions. So in areas where you have lots and lots of water, but one thing I would like to say is that it's known that 97% of the water in our planet is seawater, right? So it is heavy
Hmm.
with salt.
Yeah.
So unless you treat it, you can't use it. Then out of the remaining 3%, it is fresh water. At least two-thirds of the water is inaccessible. It is in glaciers. It is in some deep ground resources.
Yeah.
So you don't have access to it. So you're essentially playing with a very tiny amount of water that is circulating in lakes, rivers, rains, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So it has to be a multi-pronged approach. You have to look at technology like if you're close to the sea and you are in a dry, arid region, can you have high energy efficient desalination systems?
Hmm.
If you are in areas where you have, let's say, big cities,
Yeah.
you have to invest a lot in reuse.
Hmm.
So then also you have to look into. I remember I talked about reimagining the water situation. Rather than spending a lot of energy in transporting copious amount of wastewater to central processing units,
Hmm.
can you break it into more decentralized units? Can your home itself become a treatment
Yeah.
facility?
Yeah.
When your home becomes a treatment facility or toilet, you are essentially recovering water that you
Hmm.
can use for non-potable use, maybe gardening, so on and so forth, or cleaning. And then that way you are putting less stress on the city system of transporting water. So lesser water to transport, your pumping energy becomes down, and that itself promotes
Hmm.
some kind of sustainability.
Hmm.
And for uh, arid regions where you are really into, let's say, places that do not have access to water and it is really inland, then you have to really look into reuse a lot. You have to look into ground aquifers. You have to look into water harvesting. You also have to look into new technologies where you take advantage of the thermal cycles of the day, because deserts are cooler in the night. Can you
Mhm.
look at in situations where you can essentially recover water from the air itself? Because as the water temperature drops, can you
Mhm.
play with the system to get water? So there are different ways. The way we recover water from air is still there. We are beginning to see certain advancements in there, but I think there's a lot more to be done where we can be
Mhm.
successful. Just like we are taking energy from solar, we also could find out ways to take water from air itself.
Hmm. And do you think for maybe these more inland areas where there's not much lakes or that kind of thing, and it's more they mainly get their water from things like ground aquifers, do you think there's a possibility of automated detection systems, AI detection systems, to maybe find this areas? Okay, it'll say this place is likely to have a ground aquifer, this place is likely to have a ground aquifer. Do you think that's a possibility that might happen in the future?
Yeah, it will for sure. I mean, you are going to find through better ground satellite imagery and by triangulating on different
Hmm.
ways, you are going to find better access to water so that you essentially go and tap into those places where you can take out water. So you take out water, you reuse the water, and then whenever you have suddenly you have bountiful water, maybe some unexpected access to water come, maybe rain come or whatever, you also find a way of not letting the water go, but find out ways to recharge your wells
Mm,
so that the entire system becomes like the nitrogen cycle. So you're able to control it.
yeah,
The water
yeah.
cycle is in your control.
Hmm. And then maybe more overall, kind of, what trends do you foresee in AI-enabled water management in the next decade, in the next couple of
I
years?
think our cities are becoming old
Hmm.
and our waters are getting piped, right? You have pipes underneath, you have pipes overground, and pipes are pipes. They're made of metals. They can leak, they can
Hmm.
corrode. Your valves can go, you know, they could be malfunction.
Yeah.
It is humanly impossible to look at each and every aspect, and that's where AI comes in, where you are able to monitor the network at large
Hmm.
by looking at fluctuation in flow, looking at fluctuation in pressure, looking at irregularities
Hmm.
at a macro scale and getting into the micro scale,
Yeah.
you can detect places where there are possible occurrences of leakage. And when high pressure water goes through a piping network, leakage is a big issue because today it may be tiny, but over time it will become bigger, and
Mm,
then you'll find lots and lots of water getting out of the system.
okay.
The other point is that when you have leaks, you also have the other thing. You'll also have ingress of unwanted material into your system, so which will go and deposit somewhere else, and that will create further leakages.
Hmm.
So I think how you protect your aging infrastructure to ensure that if you're transporting water, you are avoiding leakages, because leakage ultimately is means you are spending energy. Your that treated water goes away for waste, and you are making less water available to the places where you want it to be available.
Hmm. I see, I see. And is there any ongoing projects or collaborations where Ion Exchange is maybe possibly building either the foundation or the technology itself to, do these things in the future? Kind of what you said of
Yes.
like the.
Yeah, we are investing a lot of energy around building this kind of
Hmm.
what you call city pipe monitoring systems, where
Yeah.
we are looking at the valves, where we are looking at distribution areas, where we are looking at flow between certain points, and then we are kind of up leveling that to
Mm.
look into the whole water footprint, and that gives us interesting situations. Then we are able to pick up pockets of inefficiencies or possible areas where there is a leakage or there is some kind of a malfunction,
Hmm.
and then we are able to pinpoint uh, and drive maintenance focus towards that. Otherwise you would only find it when there is a bigger loss.
Yeah, yeah, when the issue
We try
happens
to
itself.
capture it at the incipient condition itself, when it is just about to begin, so
Hmm.
that way the treatment costs are a lot less expensive.
Yeah, yeah, I see. And because of, you're working in these new technologies, um, how does Ion Exchange train or upskill its workforce to adapt to these emerging technologies?
That's a very interesting question, Ishant. And upskilling is something which is an ongoing process.
Mhm.
And remember, the people who began their career in industry 30, 40 years, they are not digital natives.
Yeah.
They are more like meandering into the digital world. For sure, yeah, they may be using WhatsApp, they may be using Google Map. So we are kind of telling them the kind of dividends that you get by using WhatsApp or using Google Map. I mean, Google Map is application is like AI at its best, right?
Yeah.
It routes you through the best possible way to get to a place. So we're telling them use the same technology to bring it into your day-to-day life. So we are kind of providing the incentive structure and kind of breaking it down into ways through which they can, our workforce can digest that in nuggets, and bringing those small victories through which they are able to go up the value chain.
Hmm.
So we are using large language models, using that in conversational style to bring in value. So whenever now you are looking at a certain situation, let's say something happens in the wastewater plant or in the water treatment plant, and usually it happens in the night, and then you'd go and call up somebody who knows it.
Hmm.
Otherwise you are not able to get to that person. You'll try your best, but now with AI, we
Hmm.
are able to bring the right cause, the right resolution, and the right way to attack that problem in a much more efficient and faster manner. And people are beginning to see that.
I see, I see. That's really interesting. And for maybe a student who wants to either go into this field and, make sure they're ready, um, like for this career where you combine environmental science and technology and water and that kind of thing, what can they do to get ready, for this kind of field of technology?
That's a very good question, Ishant. And I would only say that AI is a manifest of the underlying math models.
Hmm.
So for a young student who wants to build a career in AI, they have to be very good in fundamentals,
Hmm.
statistics, right? Looking
Yeah.
at data, observing data, looking distribution of data. So I think the first foundation is that we've got to be very strong in statistics. Then comes in the correlation. Then comes in the methods of looking at uh, equation of input versus output, and that's where the different math model comes in. But you got to be very strong in statistics, because you have to have that uh, eye for data, and how a certain input influences output, or how different sets of data looks like, so that you can bring in that aspect into your modeling.
Hmm.
So in different ways, a lot of data, statistical methods have already come in. I mean, the way you're right now, we are doing our conversation over the internet, right? There's a lot of statistics that is being used.
Yeah.
There's some kind of Bayesian model that is assembling our packets. So whenever we are missing anything, it is just doing some kind of uh,
Hmm.
interpolation, if you will, imputation. So we have to have a keen eye for statistics. Then comes the math model. Then of course, once you are past that barrier, and once you invest yourself into the particular domain, let's say you want to build yourself in water, then you would also start picking up the nuances of that domain. So yes, but first, statistics 101.
Hmm. Hmm. And then because you're using, it's just math, it's just statistics modeling, and there's not always a person behind it. Um, are there any issues or any faults that AI-based environmental decisions, like decision makers, is there any faults that they make in terms of like ethics or reliability or anything like that? Do any of
Yeah,
those
I
occur?
mean, there would be. I mean, any system, 80% would be good, 20% would be unexpected outcomes. So you have
Mhm.
to be very careful. So the human in the loop will become very important. Certain automation is useful because it takes away manual errors. So
Yeah.
let's say I'm controlling a plan, control. There's some kind of flow control. I don't need a
Mhm.
person to move the valve.
Yeah.
Automation can do it much better than the human. But there are certain places where you have to essentially kind of guarantee a certain outcome where you have to bring in your own judgment.
Hmm.
So it has to be within those guardrails. What AI does very well is that it takes away the accidental errors, but then ultimately you have to bring in your experience to. It's for the pilot to decide finally whether he wants to land when there's certain wind conditions, right?
Hmm.
Similarly, the autopilot can fly the plane to a large extent, but some kind of pilot intervention has to come in. Similarly, in
Yeah.
your systems also, you cannot leave everything to automation or AI. You have to
Hmm.
have those guardrails, the rule book, if you will, where you have to step in and provide some kind of human-driven inputs.
And a lot of the time, doing that human-driven input takes kind of knowledge. And this was a question recommended by my mom, but is there any books that you would recommend to kind of gain that knowledge base to make sure, you're making the correct decisions?
Yeah, I mean, that's a there are a lot of good books out there,
Hmm.
but one book I would really recommend is by Professor Julia Pearl, The Book of Why. I
Hmm.
think that's an outstanding book, and it kind of gives you the realms. They say the way we are, where we are in AI does not do reasoning, right?
Yeah.
It can only help you predict based on what it has seen in the past. So it cannot
Hmm.
separate cause versus correlation. That is for us to. So if you feed it data, it can always say that whenever Ishan takes out an umbrella, it rains. But
Yeah.
that's the reverse causation. So I think the Book of Why is something that I would recommend. It's a general reading. He has kind of the professor has not gone into too much of mathematical equations. So I would recommend that as a seminal book.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to check that book out. And generally, this has been a fascinating and inspiring conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhattacharya, for sharing your insights and experience, especially on how AI and innovation are helping us protect one of our most vital resources, water. Before we conclude, is there anything you'd like to share to our listeners?
Well, I first of all I thank you for inviting me, and I think the way you kind of led me through those questions, you kind of made it very interesting.
Hmm.
I wish your readers or your listeners all the best, and I would only go back to the one of the questions that you asked. Be very aware of, be very curious about your surroundings. A lot of the solutions are already out there. It's
Hmm.
how we can bring in that element of curiosity, and then kind of also look at technology and bring both those elements together, and you'll find your solutions.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to our audience, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to shoot me an email at ishantmajumdar@gmail.com, share it with your friends, and stay with our podcast to enjoy more conversations on Amplified with AI. Thank you so much again for having this conversation with me, and I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, Ishan.